Well, hello, and welcome to the Growth Mindset Podcast. Join me, Sam Harris, on my journey of curiosity and growth. I have conversations with some of the world's most fascinating humans, from billionaires to Olympians, and most everyone in between, such as suspiciously happy people and even a hitman. Success isn't just for successful people, it is earned, and you can earn it too. I find out how ordinary people become extraordinary to fuel your own growth mindset. Hello, and welcome to Mental Health Week. On the podcast today, we have Ross Jackson-Hicks. Ross is the founder of Man Down Cornwall, a mental health charity to help men overcome their issues. Ross has suffered a series of problems himself with various addictions, and it was a real struggle for him to turn his life around. He is now a bundle of warmth and happiness and lives a chilled out and productive life, working as a hairdresser, one of the most fulfilling jobs you can do, whilst also managing the Man Down Cornwall project with regular meetings across the whole of Cornwall for men to come along and share their problems. So we learn about the issues that people face with themselves and the issues that they face trying to deal with them and come out to the world and solve them, and how we can all just be happier and nicer people. So this was a great conversation, and I'm very happy to be talking about these things during Mental Health Week. I should also mention that the app I'm building, Syncify, is to help us with our mental health to combat isolation and loneliness. It's a podcast app that lets you connect with your friends in the app and share your podcast experiences. You can listen together live or catch up on the same content. Instead of listening by yourself and having ideas that you can't ever talk to people about, you can actually chat with others about their thoughts and ideas as they have them. I personally find it very hard to reach out to people a lot for no reason, just to chat, but I do love doing things with others, and if I actually am listening to things with them at the same time, it's natural to just share ideas and think about them. So for me, it really helps me actually connect more with others because I just don't go out of my way to do these things as a guy. So I really think it should help other people, and I'd love for you to sign up and try it yourself at syncifyapp.com. Now, without further ado, I bring to you Ross Jackson-Hicks. Welcome to the show. Today I have Ross Jackson-Hicks on the podcast, who is a hairdresser, but he also runs Man Down Cornwall, which is a mental health charity for men suffering from mental health problems to actually come and talk about them and resolve them amongst peers and just learn about being a human a bit more and become a bit more comfortable in your own head. So it would be my pleasure to let you introduce yourself, talk about what you've been doing.
Thanks for having me on the show, Sam. Great to meet you. So my name's Ross. I am a hairdresser by trade. I've got a salon in Cornwall, in Falmouth, and coming up to sort of 3 years ago now, we've been running Man Down, which is a men's mental health support group based in Cornwall. And what we do is we hold meetings every fortnight around Cornwall for men that are experiencing problems with their mental health. And what we do is we create a nice, safe environment for them to come and talk in a non-judgmental environment full of empathy and full of guys that are all experiencing similar issues and have similar concerns.
Cool. Yeah, so it would be nice to kind of hear about what led you into starting Man Down and like the problems you were facing and how that came about.
Yeah, certainly. So I was diagnosed with ADHD as a teenager. For those of you that don't know what ADHD is, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So it was actually ADD, and then it was the hyperactivity was added into it. So it's a neurological disorder. It affects the neurotransmitters in your brain, which control sort of memory and concentration. So I was very impulsive as a child, very restless. I didn't sleep very well. I was very, very naughty. And my behaviour became sort of more erratic as I got older, as I reached sort of late teens. I went into my 20s, and alongside the symptoms, it can be anxiety and depression, which I suffered with. Anxiety mainly. When the anxiety got quite sort of a proper hold of me, then I would experience some low-level depression alongside that. But it was mainly anxiety. And I self-medicated with drink and drugs for 15 years, and life became very difficult. So I decided to hang my drinking gloves up about 3 years ago and start really sort of working on myself, and started doing a lot of self-development, and that just inspired me to create Man Down, come up with something where I knew I felt safe and I felt a lot better talking about my problems, about my anxiety, and I just wanted to roll with that. And like I said, 3 years later, we're here with nearly 700 members now in Cornwall, 18 locations. The other co-founder, Brad, is a very good friend of mine. He's retired and he's worked with quite a few charities before in the past, and he's been really the backbone of this organisation. He's been the one that has taken my ideas and my creativeness and he's put it into action. So between us both, we've created something really, really unique and very special.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds like a really useful person to have, like the yin to your yang kind of thing. You said you spent like 15 years basically self-medicating with drink and drugs and things. So, I mean, that's a long time. So I guess that's just like normal life as far as you're concerned. Could you kind of paint a picture of what that means entirely? Because it's not like one point in time you suddenly just epically have a change in spirit from like 1 week to the before. So did it just like creep on over like the space of a year where you just started like taking more and more things and all?
It was an amalgamation of things, really. It was all building up and I was just not very self-aware. And I just believed that I was just living a normal life, which a sort of young man in his 30s with a business and a family was supposed to do. As society says that you go out and drink and enjoy yourself. But I mean, obviously underneath all that, it was the suffering and the anxiety and the fear. And I've never been able to just have one drink. I needed a lot because I was drinking for a reason. I was drinking for a purpose. I wasn't drinking to be social. I was drinking to put a little bit of a stop on my busy mind. And the self-awareness, I just never really sort of knew what else I was supposed to do with my mind. And yeah, the drink and the drugs was just something which numbed the pain, numbed the mind for sort of 24 hours. And then the big, massive anxiety, fear cloud come over. Obviously, anyone knows what I'm talking about. The day after you've had a really big session, a really big drinking session or whatever, it's unbearable, isn't it?
I couldn't handle hangovers or come downs at all.
No.
These days, I was like, the worst.
They are the worst. And it was almost self-harm, really. I would just put on this front and want to be the sort of centre of attention and big and loud and funny and important. And yeah, at the time, I didn't think I was. It was so bizarre how I just thought that it was going to be sustainable. And it's probably the best decision I've ever made in my life. On a different scale to sort of marrying my wife and my kids and stuff and agreeing to have children. But this was the ultimatum. And it just completely shifted my whole life. It shifted my whole thinking pattern. It gave me a clearer mind. I was able to just put a lot more of my energy into being productive and, being motivated. And the whole self-development journey began then.
What was it that like triggered you? And do you think that if you could go back and see yourself like 10 years ago, you could have said something that would have helped change you earlier at all?
Yeah. That's a good
give
question.
You like that self-reflection?
Really. Do you know what? I was just so single-minded. I think I was in a state of just not being able to listen to anyone's advice, just not see things clearly. I've always been a person that's learned from my own mistakes, unfortunately, and I'm not very good at taking orders. I am now. Well, not orders, but instruction.
Yeah, you should have learned to value these things more. Because I suddenly grew up as a kid, like not really listening to teachers just because they didn't teach me in a way that helped me. So I just grew up knowing that like they were just sort of ignored and they tell you to do something one way, but that you wouldn't actually be able to learn what they were telling you anyway. Whereas if I just did it in my own way, like it worked. So I didn't really pay attention to rules as such. Which you have to find things out, which is often the hard way.
It is the hard way. And I just didn't conform in school. I was just literally like a sort of caged animal that was let out in a classroom. And I just could not concentrate. I could not take information in. Anything that I was slightly interested in, I put a little bit of effort in, and then I tended to sort of hyper focus in on that. And that's one of the benefits of ADHD is the hyper focus. It can be used in such a positive manner. But I never knew how to use my brain. I was just told to sit there and listen to 2 hours worth of maths and remember everything, and it was my worst nightmare.
Yeah, interesting. But yeah, so that didn't really answer the question of one, what was it that like flipped the switch that got you to sort of...
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Decided.
I've gone off on one already.
Yeah, don't worry, I do this all the time.
So it was... There wasn't really one sort of particular moment. in that time, it was just a lot of things building up over time. I was just really unhappy with who I was becoming, who I was, how I was acting, how I was behaving. And I actually got arrested for ABH and common assault 9 years ago. And I was looking at a prison sentence, I was looking at a custodial sentence, and I ended up getting a suspended prison sentence because it was my first offence. But I lost control. I was on a night out. Two guys approached me and tried to take my hat off, and I just completely lost it. And it was all that built up anger, frustration, stress just exploded. And unfortunately, that didn't even stop me when I got over the initial shock. And I was actually put on tag for 3 months, and I went straight back into drinking and straight back into the life I was leading before. But it was one particular night, New Year's Eve, 3 years ago, and I woke up and I had the anxiety and I had the normal fear, but something inside me just said, that's enough now, that you don't deserve to be feeling like this. And that was it. And then the 6th of January 2017, I kicked it all to the curb and have never looked back.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know about these things and if it kind of takes maturity and just sort of experience of doing them, because I remember my 20th birthday, as in, I think from about 16 to 20, I just did like epic amounts of drinking and did quite a lot of different drugs and things and went on wild ones. But like I didn't have the best memory when I got drunk, and I'd often just sort of black out and like not even remember half the night out. And on my 20th, like I went to my mates in Birmingham or something, and I remember just having like vodka shots still like in the house. Next thing I knew, I'd woken up in, I don't know where, like in just my boxers in some guy's flat, having pissed myself and had no idea. And I had to get home, and they'd drawn penises all over me and swastikas, and like even in my eyelids. And I was just like this hungover, like shit mess. And I just was like, yeah, I don't think I ever want to get that drunk again. I mean, I like actually remembering what's the point of a night out if I don't remember it? Yeah, I definitely sort of, I mean, I have other stories just like that beforehand that I didn't quite learn from, but at that point I did. And so I arrived at uni 1 week later for my freshers week being like, yeah, I don't really feel like drinking, mate, guys. And yeah, it was a bit awkward then when I got to uni. It was just like, oh, I'm a bit like old now and mature, as everyone else was like happy to start drinking. But yeah, definitely.
I think those stories are good to have for you because they build your personality. They build your character. They build up what you're about. And they also help you build, hopefully, resilience. I've got many stories like that. I think, some are too bad to sort of repeat on here, but it's like, why do we do this? Why, as a society, and especially young men, why are we expected to go out and behave like that? It's bonkers when you think about it, really. And I've sort of come to the conclusion that not everyone that drinks to numb the pain. Some people like to have a drink to unwind, and they've got control over it, which is what alcohol's supposed to be used for. But if you do suffer with your mental health and you have got an addictive personality, then just stay away from everything if you can, because there's no limit, is there really? There's no control.
Until your body like shuts down, really. Which generally my limit of like just passing out somewhere. And
exactly.
That's not really a useful limit to have. It's really weird, like the social pressure behind like, drinking more than other people and sort of trying to be manly and stuff. When you're like, well, surely just being happy all evening and being present is like the most important thing, and like how you do that is not so important. It's really strange.
It is. It doesn't matter what sort of class you fit into in life. Working class, middle class. Alcohol is just across the board one of the most destructive things on the planet. More destructive than any drug.
Yeah, it's really strange the way it's so like prevalent of just, it's quite hard. As in, I'm someone that like, I still drink a bit, but not really that interested in it. But if I go out with some people and like, if I'm not drinking, they're just sort of, especially if you just go out with like one person or something, they don't relax to then like not drink. Whereas if you just get like a partner, just sort of hang out and you're like, well, why do I need to do this for you to like feel like I'm relaxed? What's wrong with it?
I know. It's peer pressure. And because it's so socially acceptable, people just go along with it and they feel pressure. They're put under pressure to drink. And that's when people, if they're put under pressure and they actually think, oh, do you know what? My anxiety's gone for a couple of hours while I'm drunk. I quite like this. This is good. And then that's how it all sort of, snowballs out of effect. And it's the same with drugs. I mean, I think they both go hand in hand. I mean, without drink, I certainly wouldn't have done any drugs. So it was all very driven by alcohol.
How did you get into your drug journey exactly? And did it become like a thing, like every night you just be taking some drugs with your alcohol, or what sort of?
It started off with cannabis when I was younger, when I was a teenager, because it calmed me down. And I was like, wow, this actually calms me down and stops my mind from going a million miles an hour, 24 hours a day. So I sort of got quite into smoking cannabis. It never had a negative effect on me. It never made me paranoid. But then, it sort of like made me lack a little bit of motivation, and it's quite a lazy sort of drug. So then alcohol sort of took over, and then I'd be out drinking. I'd get quite drunk and I'd think I want to drink for a little bit longer and take some cocaine. And all that used to do is just prolong my drinking time. I didn't particularly enjoy taking it. It just came hand in hand with the alcohol. So it was always alcohol mainly.
Interesting. So then what advice do you give to people now to sort of reduce taking alcohol or find ways to just still be social and enjoy their lives, but without alcohol?
It's a mindset. Your mind is such a powerful tool, and it's so easy to pick up a drink. You've had a good day, pick up a drink. I've had a shit day, pick up a drink. It's used for so many different reasons. And once you start using that, you don't have a lot of resilience, and you have a weak mindset, really. So if anyone's listening to this out there, and there's a few things which I've said that sort of resonates with them, I just completely stopped drinking. I didn't have any help. It was very, very difficult. The sugar was the worst. I just craved sugar for the first sort of 3-4 weeks. It was bonkers. But I just read a lot about mental health. I read a lot of books, biographies about people that had had problems with alcohol, Russell Brand, The Freedom from Our Addictions. All these sort of things really, really helped me. Just started becoming more mindful and just taking care of myself a little bit more, just sort of loving myself a lot more. And not being so destructive. Mindfulness, exercise, and diet, those 3 things definitely saved my life. And I still use them now. It's like my medication.
Yeah. There's been saying now with like the current lockdown, you should try and have like 5 minutes for your mind a day, 5 minutes for your body, and 5 minutes for your heart. So like spend 5 minutes meditating, or like doing a diary, 5 minutes doing some exercise, and 5 minutes like talking to friends or something to just be social, at least every day. So in terms of, you mentioned loving yourself. What are your kind of strategies to help love yourself, to make sure that you're looking out?
Just have compassion for yourself. If you're going to have a shit day, you're going to have a shit day. No amount of positive mental attitude is going to prevent you from having a shit day. But just don't let it control you. Just know that better days are going to come, and they do. And just be thankful for what you've got around you, your family, your health. It's a beautiful planet we live on, and Cornwall is a beautiful place, and we're very lucky down here. But again, your mind is just such a powerful thing. I read somewhere that we use it to only like 10% capacity to what we could actually be doing with our minds. And just starting little projects, learning a new skill, and spending a little bit more time doing that, rather than stood in a pub for 5-6 hours, sort of 2-3 times a week. Connection's nice with meeting up with friends and stuff, but you can do that
in learning a skill. You can join a choir, you can join a chess club, you can join a writing club.
Yeah, but it's what you want to do. It's what you enjoy doing, not what society says that you should enjoy. If you don't like watching football, don't like watching football. Do what you enjoy to do. We're constantly told that we've got to like this, and we've got to like that, and we've got to dress like this, and it's very controlling society.
Yes, it's a weird place. Potential benefits of coronavirus in terms of just seeing how society is sort of made up, and that we can kind of change so much about it. But I'm not sure how and the mental health thing is still like a problem that's more playing out now, as people are all being in lockdown, and the things that you've been advising are sort of timeless things anyway that we should all be doing, but obviously also very timely of the moment when we are suffering problems and having our own mental health issues, and maybe needing to love ourselves more. I guess you've been having to run your normal meetings online, but what are the things that people have been suffering from in your group as you kind of run like weekly meetings with people who have?
So it's mainly sort of anxiety and depression. We get a lot of guys with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. We have guys with sort of gambling addictions, male abuse, lots of different problems that people have got that come to us for. Me and Brad are not professionals. We are just people that have experienced things ourselves, and what we've seen and heard and felt within the group over the sort of, nearly 3 years, coming up to 3 years, it gives us a little bit more of a right to be able to talk to people about, mental health and how everyone's experience is. And it all sort of comes down to like the stigma and the shame. And what we're seeing a lot of now is loneliness, and loneliness can be interpreted wrong. I think sometimes boredom is a big one, but there's so many things that you can do, like the internet. There's so many new skills that you can learn. I mean, I've just done a life coaching course for £19 online, and I've really, really enjoyed it. But there's so many things you can do. I mean, if you enjoy watching Netflix, then if that's your self-care, then, go ahead, but don't sit there for 10 hours. Set yourself an hour or 2 hours or whatever you're going to do. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of loneliness, and people are very anxious about the whole sort of virus thing. It's really uncertain. I mean, even with the latest news about Boris came on the other day, which was quite confusing, but they've just furloughed for another 4 months now. So, I mean, do they know something that we don't? Is it, they're saying everything's going to get normal.
Even when they're kind of starting to relax measures, it's not like the restaurant trade is going to pick up, or the tourism trade and all these things, and you're going to be able to fill a stadium full of people if you have social distancing, because you're within 2 meters of like 20 people normally when you're sat in a stadium. So if those 20 people for one aren't there, that's like, okay, 1% of the capacity or something, which is ridiculous. So there's going to be a lot of money not happening. So like the economy can't just bounce back as it is. And lots of businesses that have been like just about surviving are sort of suddenly going to have like, okay, we can't start. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting 3 months, especially if they have to then shut down again because of the peak starts coming back because of things have been relaxed.
I know.
It takes off pretty fast. So
there's still, there's still 600 people dying in the country, and there's still 3,500.
Yeah, which is way more than when we went into lockdown.
And there's still 3,500 people that are catching the virus.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing.
Yeah, it's like, but
the rate of, what we're seeing now and the amount of people catching the virus is not the same as what we saw before, because we're testing so many more people. So it looks like about the same amount of people are catching the virus each day, when actually it's a lot less, because we're testing a much higher percentage of the people each day that caught it. Even though it looks like it's kind of staying the same, it's actually kind of the testing's ramped up and the numbers have kind of gone down. But it's just sort of a trick of data to make you feel slightly. But it's generally been a bit of a shit situation in terms of data and knowledge of things. Yeah,
and I think all our guys were sort of relying on those meetings coming up every fortnight, and they were looking forward to seeing the other guys, because it's the other members. That's what makes Man Down. It's not me and Brad. We don't go to every meeting. We did when we first started, but we've got facilitators that we've got. I mean, they're also the backbone of Man Down. They have, they're sort of self-organising within their own groups. So we have facilitator meetings and stuff. But I think they're all missing connection. So I'm certainly missing connection as well.
Certainly a big one, like the loneliness and things. It's a hard one to fix as well. Because I had a therapist because I wasn't really like depressed or anything. I mean, I just definitely have loneliness, but otherwise I'm a pretty positive person, so I never really get like super depressed. But it was great to talk to them and find out like deeper issues that I've got and like resolve them and things, and be like, oh yeah, it's kind of normal to think this stuff. But it doesn't really make a difference to how lonely you are. If you can talk to someone once a week, it's not going to like solve that, and do some things about it that you maybe aren't doing, and like just a nudge to be like, oh yeah, why don't I bother to go out just because I'm not drinking? Oh, maybe I should just do this thing. Something like living in London can be like a very lonely place if you're like someone who's living by yourself right now, which must be pretty hard.
Yeah. London's such a busy place, but it's such a lonely place. Like you said, hundreds of thousands of people walking past you each day, just ignoring you. Can be worse than sort of going out for a walk on your own for an hour and not seeing anyone. It's different form of communication.
You work for yourself as well. As in, like, I've got so many friends in London, but I think I've only got like maybe like 4 or 5 friends who are like really close friends who I could like text at any point in time and be like, oh, I feel like doing something, and I didn't realize I was going to need to do something until like just now. But I guess I'm feeling a bit lonely, would like to hang out. And then they're probably busy because if they have lives. And so everyone else I know is like, I know them and they're really cool, but like I just wouldn't sort of text them to sort of be like, oh, actually I want to go to a pub right now. And so, it's really hard to actually like connect with people because everyone's so far away from each other. And it's an awkward issue. Probably just going to live in London. That would be the solution. You mentioned you have like anxiety and things. How did you feel about starting Man Down? Because surely that must have been an anxious, like, oh, I'm going to just like get a group of men who have problems and put them in a place and talk about my problems and share stuff. and
not know what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's just me all over. I have these really, really sort of creative, crazy ideas at like 1:00 in the morning or talking to my clients. And that's impulsiveness that I've got. My mind doesn't get an idea and put it through sort of like filters. The idea comes in and it shoots straight out my mouth. And then before I know about it, I'm doing, and I'm not thinking, I'm doing. And then all of a sudden I've got to think about what I'm doing. And I've always been like that. You know, I could start a business up in an hour. It probably wouldn't be a very successful one, but I'd still do it. And then the anxiety creeps in and the fear. But when I'm not living within my own values and beliefs, that's when the anxiety is at its peak. And that's when it sort of grabs hold of me and is very, very disabling. But yeah, we were very anxious. We didn't know how many people were going to turn up. We didn't really know what we were going to talk about. We had a couple of sheets of paper with questionnaires, and there was the reason why it drove me to do Man Down. There was a couple of local guys to the Falmouth area that took their own lives, unfortunately. And I knew them indirectly, and it really affected me because I know how easy that decision is to make. I've never been suicidal myself, but I've definitely had suicidal thoughts. Probably not going to make sense to a lot of people listening, but intrusive thoughts and having thoughts about my family would probably be better off without my really angry, grumpy, nasty ass around. Sometimes you think maybe I'm better off not here, but I've never made plans to be suicidal. So there's a massive difference in that. And that was what drove me to start Man Down, because I knew how I felt when I talked about my mental health. Showing vulnerability is like true strength. You can talk about it. You can still have a positive mindset. You can still be mentally strong and suffer with mental illness. And that's what I wanted to try and put across to people.
Yeah, it's an awkward one. I mean, I've had some friends who've also taken their own lives. And I guess, like I just mentioned, sort of, they weren't in like the group of people who, like, I would just text at any point, random point in time. But like, I'm sure if I had spent more time with them, like they would have been. But you just didn't know, because like I hadn't spoken to them for a few months or something. I had no idea they were going through problems. And like, you sort of feel guilty that you could have maybe helped or something, but you just had no idea. And like, we don't live in a world where those are the kind of things that you talk about with people. And like, you would never go onto social media to sort of talk about this kind of stuff unless you're like looking for attention or something. Or if you do, people think you're looking for attention, and it's a nightmare. And the world isn't really sort of set up properly for these things. And I think there's a lot of stuff around inequality for women, which is huge and a massive problem. But there is also the fact that like men do take a lot more of their own lives, and women are much better at talking about their feelings with their friends and these things. And men, we just don't have this as a sort of structure. You don't call your mate to kind of whine about things. And I mean, I've never been very good at complaining and stuff. I just always been someone that wanted to like deal with my own problems and don't like really sharing them. And it's just a strange society with how this is kind of happens. And you have no worth if you kind of have problems and you can't deal with them as a man, basically, which breeds a load of issues. So I guess, have you found ways to help men share outside of the group and become better at helping themselves? Or is it kind of like they need to come to the group so they can like actually have this vent and it's like this private place for it?
Yeah, I think when they come to the group, a lot of them, that's the first time they've ever opened up. It's the first time they've ever talked about their mental health. So it gives them a lot more confidence to be able to go and share that with family members or friends. And we encourage that, because not necessarily, like you said, you think people are maybe attention seeking or obviously different people's perception. As someone that suffers with anxiety, I would worry about that. I would think, oh, I'm not going to put that because someone might think this. So it's like we try and get our guys talking as much as possible. But it's difficult when you talk to your family and your friends because they've got an emotional attachment to you and want obviously the best for you, but they don't really know what to say.
Yeah, and also like, if I had to tell my mum about things, she just worry about things. I'm just like, I just want her to treat me normally. And she's constantly like, sort of stuff on eggshells or trying to be like, oh, Sam, you only today or something. It's just like weird. It doesn't help at all. And yeah, strange one.
It is. It's you can't have that conversation with them sometimes. We get a lot of mums, a lot of wives, a lot of sisters messaging us and just saying, like, really worried about my brother, my dad, my boyfriend, my husband. You know, what can I do? And it's like, just be there for them. Just be non-judgmental and just listen to them. And that's all you can do, really. There isn't a great deal you can do. You can't really sort of offer your opinions. There isn't any other help you can sort of give them. That's where therapists come in. That's where possibly medication, if that's the route that you want to go down. But like you said, you touched on something that you saw a therapist. We highly recommend that you have like a helping relationship with someone, because it does help unearth really, really sort of deep-rooted problems that may be causing anxiety or depression or whatever it may be. It's all linked to sort of childhood experiences. Well, not all of it, but the majority of it is. And talking about it sort of sometimes makes you realise, oh, actually, it might be that, or it might be this. And so it's a very powerful tool, talking. Really, really powerful.
Yeah, there's so many things you don't realise, and you often don't see the capacity for help from it. Like, you don't really see what the value is of sharing your experience, because when you can't see the solution yourself, you don't see how anyone else would come up with a solution. And
exactly.
It's the same with anything, like in business or something. If you've got a problem, you're just like, well, I don't see the point of looking for advice, because they can't tell you the same things. But people just have, there's like the world, and your view of the world of it is like tiny, and people have very different views. And when you kind of get them, that's where like ideas come from to solve your problems, which super useful.
You just talked about, business and stuff. It just gave me like another idea of, because we get a mixture of people coming through the door. We get people that have got their own businesses, that are very successful in life, but are really struggling, and they haven't really sort of dealt with the stress in a sort of positive way, and they've let it consume them and control them, like what happened to me, my business, and it all sort of ended up sort of falling apart around me. And I didn't want to take any advice from my business. Certainly didn't want to take any advice about me personally. And we say to people, treat yourself like a business. How you look after your business, treat yourself like that. You do your marketing, you work hard, you just do that to yourself and see how things turn around. Because I know that you help guys out with their business, so treat yourself like a business.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's also, I quite like the try and treat yourself like your best friend or something, because you can be quite a dick to yourself. And
yeah, absolutely.
But then, like, if it was your friends who had the same problem, you'd give them completely different advice, and you're like, oh, well, you actually just need to do this, and your life will be fine.
It's so hard not giving people advice. And that's one of the things that therapists and counsellors sort of try not to do. They just try to sort of have a helping relationship with you and try and use questions and various sort of techniques to try and get out of you what they need. Because advice is good sometimes, especially within business and stuff, but on a personal level, we're all so different, aren't we? We're all made up of completely different things.
Yeah, humans are definitely interesting. It's really fascinating sort of seeing how people's decisions get made, because we are very logical in terms of we're built kind of like an algorithm to try and just survive and make the best decision we possibly can given the environment of what we understand it to be. So everyone kind of has a reason for what they're doing, which is always good to remember when you see people being weird and stuff. Cool. So a few things I'd like to ask rounding up. What do you see in like the future? Because obviously we had like a massive amount of change suddenly. Hopefully we become more aware of our mental health from this, like more people are thinking about meditation and therapy, or like finding ways to actually like self-care. What do you think is going to be like the biggest important things to be thinking about in like 5 years' time that are going to be causing problems or ways to fix them?
This time has really give people a lot of time to have a think about, what does this all mean? How have they been using this time? Definitely sort of like evaluating their life, the worry, the stress, the commitment. Were you just a slave to society? Were you just sort of, working and coming home and doing everything, in line with everyone else? It's definitely taught people that you don't need materialistic things to make life complete. I've certainly felt a change, and I think people are just going to hopefully be a little bit more kinder to the planet. I don't know. I just think people just maybe be a little bit more self-aware and just be a little bit more appreciative, hopefully. And I think everyone is just all consuming now. They just want everything. It doesn't matter what the price of it is. So I think hopefully I'd like to think people will be a little bit more mindful, a little bit more caring for one another, maybe try and sort of look after the planet a little bit more and just be comfortable being.
Definitely. Okay. And then what is one of your earliest ever memories?
One of my earliest memory would be making an Easter bonnet. My mum making me a massive, great big yellow Easter bonnet, big yellow bunny. And I just remember having that sat on my head at an Easter party, just thinking, I've got the biggest fucking Easter hat out of the whole the whole room. And that's my earliest. I think that's my earliest memory.
This is a happy memory. You're super content.
It's a happy memory. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think you've like loved Easter like more than you should do ever since, or anything?
Probably. Subconsciously, I'm like an absolute Easter nut.
Yeah. Screw this Christmas lark. Easter.
Yeah. That's it.
Cool. What was the kind thing that someone did for you in the last 2 months?
The last 2 months, my son made me a card. My son made me an Easter card. That was nice.
Easter. Nice.
We're going Easter again.
Yeah. That's cool. I mean, making cards is awesome. I think in these days when everything's so like fast and cheap, it's like putting time into anything is just so valuable and like appreciated now.
Exactly.
That is to people. It's really enjoyable as well to write. So cool.
Yeah.
You do more of that. Good. Okay. That was a hard question to finish with. Any questions that you have for me at all? I
suppose I have. I mean, where are you hoping to sort of end up eventually with in regards to work wise? Because I know you're spinning a few plates and you've got a few things going. Where's your real passion lie?
I like improving the world, and I kind of see the world as it could be, and I'm never satisfied as it is, because I'm always like, well, this is wrong, this is improvement, this is something that can change. And so I just really want to build my capacity to make change quickly. So the building businesses that then give me more leverage to build other businesses or solutions faster, and like build credibility to go into like writing books or doing anything that helps, basically, just because of that's mainly my interest. I also want to have like the time and headspace to spend time just having fun. So having a bit of plate spinning in terms of traveling the world and enjoying things. And we'd like to play lots of music and just do writing and things in the morning, and maybe have like the afternoon for doing work, and live somewhere awesome like Cornwall where I can go surfing and stuff.
Absolutely. Sounds like a good plan, man.
And somehow find a wife and kids and these things in the next like 5 years, I guess.
that will come along in time. How old are you now?
29. I just think of myself as 30.
Right, 29. Yeah. So
it's weird because I always think of myself as younger than my current age until like 29, and suddenly I'm basically 30, whatever. And how this has happened.
Just round it up.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be 38 in August, so it depends on who you're speaking to. People say, "Oh, you're still very young," or you speak to someone that's younger. Oh, that's quite. So it just depends. But if you enjoy working and you enjoy doing what you're doing, then that is just such a bonus, and that is in itself is a happy life. But as long as you give yourself time to, be mindful and relax in your own way. And that's the whole old sort of cliche, isn't it? Follow your heart. But it's true. Follow your heart and follow your head. And it doesn't concern me what anyone else is doing with their lives anymore. As long as they're living a happy life, I don't care. But having this car and having that house and having these, it doesn't bother me. I used to be ruled by money. I used to be obsessed by it, about making money and having this and having that. But it doesn't make you happy. And using your energy and putting it into something positive like you're doing and like I'm doing, there's no better feeling. Life is hard at times, but you can make it a lot harder for yourself, if you know what I mean.
Definitely. It's definitely as hard as you perceive it, and all thoughts within. Strange one. Yeah. It just constantly feels like you can kind of just be like tripping yourself up on like things.
It does. And I think it's about having that positive mental attitude in the back there, saying that you're doing enough, you are enough. Just giving yourself a little bit of a breathing space now and again.
Cool.
That's what I've learned anyway.
Yeah. I've been trying to go like running every day and stuff, or just like see something different. But I shattered my leg last year, and it's now like a whole inch shorter, and just been imbalancing myself. So I kind of like strained my other leg trying to like correct something, and so I haven't been able to run it all. But I've just got a bike like 2 days ago, and I've just been like going cycling every day for like a good hour or two, and it's just been like, oh my god, I get to see things. And like
you got to connect with nature and just take things in. A bit of fresh air, it's just great for you.
Yeah, getting away from the computer. Cool. Anyway, thanks for the chat. And it's been really fun, and certainly learned lots, and been very useful for me right now, and hopefully useful for others in terms of thinking about their mental health and self-love and these things. So pleasure having you on.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I've really enjoyed chatting to you this afternoon, mate, and best of luck with everything, and maybe have a chat again one day when we're both living in Cornwall.
Yeah, living the dream.
Brilliant.
Congratulations on listening to a whole episode of the Growth Mindset podcast. Before you race into another podcast, try pausing. Ask yourself, what have you learned? What could you change? How will you make that change happen? Did you press pause? Knowledge is useless without action. What did you learn? What should you change? And how will you make that change happen? You can tell us what you learned by contacting us through the website growthmindsetpodcast.com, and feel free to connect with us or our guests, or just peruse the show notes. Our Instagram is @growthmindsetpodcast, or follow me @SamJamSnaps for a daily reminder to stop using Instagram. If you enjoy random acts of kindness and want to support the show, you can support us on Patreon or leave us a review on iTunes, and you'll make me very happy. And with that, keep learning and keep growing.